Hello friends, it's Kathy Clement with Kathy by Design. I am so glad you could join me here today. This is a project that I have made for the latest challenge at the Frillian Funky Challenge blog, which is sponsored by the Funkie Junkie boutique, and I'll put both of those links below for you. The theme of this challenge is haberdashery. Isn't that a great word? Which basically means anything that has to do with sewing or tailoring. A haberdasher is someone who sells ribbons and buttons and trims. So I've created this sewing themed folio to share with you today. And before we get looking at it, I will show you the products that I use so that if you want to recreate it, you'll know. All of these are available at the Funkie Junkie boutique. This is the Stamperia Atelier collection. This is gorgeous, and of course it's all about sewing and haberdashery, buttons, thimbles, scissors, threads, and like all Stamperia collections, everything you need for the project is contained in this paper pack. And they work in all the mixed media into the design of the paper, so it makes it very easy to put together a really fantastic looking project. So that's the main thing that I used. I also did some stenciling using the Tim Holtz stitched layering stencil and the Tim Holtz, hold on, I have it here somewhere, the Tim Holtz crossed layering stencil, and I used that with opaque crackle texture paste from Ranger and just a teeny tiny drop of Stormy Sky re-inker, and then I mixed that together and applied it with my palette knife, and that is how I got this beautiful blue crackled design on the cover. And then I also used it inside. So this is a metal corner from the Funkie Junkie boutique. These flowers are Little Birdie Crafts. These are the Natalie Blue. Aren't they gorgeous? And they come with all these wonderful little foliage pieces and everything. This ribbon is from the Funkie Junkie boutique, and it is a May Arts ribbon, 3/8 inch, and I think it's called Champagne plaid. So that's beautiful. And then for the frame on the cover, I used these Tim Holtz vignette frames. These are awesome. They're actually made of wood, and I altered that with black gesso, and then just rubbed in some Prima texture crackle gold and silver, and then I also covered it with the crackle paste that I mixed with old paper. So that's really fun. And then I've used these index clips. I used my very last Tim Holtz assemblage mirrored medallion. I love those guys. I used my trusty Tim Holtz Sewing Room Big Die, some Spellbinder circle dies, and Tammy Tutterow waterfall dies. So that's the basics of what I used in this. Now we'll look at the project. This is a very generous 6x8. It has a 1/2 inch spine on both sides. And again, I've just layered these up. I love to go to yard sales and estate sales, and I found this one woman was getting rid of a huge bag of just old mixed sewing notions. There were teeny tiny spools of thread, snaps, hooks and eyes. This lace is from the Funkie Junkie boutique, and then I also am always looking for these vintage buttons because I adore them. I have a real problem with them. This is a vintage safety pin, also you can get from the Funkie Junkie boutique. And then I had this little tiny piece of counted cross-stitch cloth that also I picked up at a yard sale. I added stitching around the edges of the paper, then distressed and inked with frayed burlap. And this does have a magnetic closure. And I took pictures to kind of show you how I built the folio base and where I added the magnets. So on this first flap, we have a little pocket, and there's that mirrored medallion just strung through with burlap string. And then I fussy cut these elements from the paper collection and laid them on craft cardstock and traced around them to create these little books. And I just left the hinges right here in the corner. in another one of my yard sale finds, someone was getting rid of all the old sewing kits that they used to give you when you opened a bank account. So I tucked that in there. That's really cute. And then I just created a little book by cutting out one of the dress forms and making a little shaped insert to go in this little pocket. The pocket is made just by cutting the paper about 1.5 inches wider than than the flap is, and then you just score and fold and you've got an instant pocket. This is Tim Holtz Remnants designer tape here just to fill in the gaps. So this also has a magnet and opens out like this, and here is that lovely waterfall, and this is just held shut with a little piece of ribbon. And I've decorated each of the inside pages. These are just tiny 3x3, but you could add journaling, you could add, you know, quotes, whatever you wanted to add here. And then there's another one at the bottom. So a little fussy cut element from the paper so that you could add a date or a little note there. Then this is a box style pocket, and I'll just hold this up. I guess you can see that. This has it's actually a 1/2 inch deep, so you can put a lot of stuff in here. If you had sewing memorabilia, you could stick it in here. And I'll show you how to build the box in the little tutorial too. It's not a complete tutorial, but it's got a lot of really interesting elements in it that you can use to build your own. So on the cover of this little 4 1/4 by 6 1/4 accordion fold folio, and I'll just tell you very quickly how I did this. I cut craft cardstock to measure 6 1/4 inches by 4 1/4, and then I just pieced it together with score tape at the fold where the two pieces come together, and you can't even tell once you put your designer paper on there that you've paper pieced it. So it works very, very well. A couple of little tuck spots in here, little bits of remnant tape to kind of go with the shabby distressed pages, and there are 10 panels on here, so really cool. I love this paper collection. And for the dress form and the spool of thread, I first die cut thin chipboard, then covered it with the designer paper just to add dimension. And there's one of those index clips. So this just fits in this box pocket. And then over here, we just have a very simple flap element with a chipboard dress form that I had in my stash. This is the ribbon that your little extra goodie bag from the Funkie Junkie boutique is tied with. It was already dyed and it matched, so I just used that. Another index clip here for a turn tab, and then inside I used the inventor stamps from Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz to just kind of do these very faded vintage looking stamped panels here, and a little pair of scissors, also Funkie Junkie. Here's where I added that little bit of stitching with Prima gold crackle paste, and that's basically it. It's a pretty basic folio, but it is so pretty, and if you had a sewing room or a craft room, this would be gorgeous on display in there. It's just got lots of dimension and it's soft and shabby. So stick around. I will have still photos with descriptions for you of how to create the base and the box pocket. And thank you for joining me, and I'm going to go get my craft on. Bye.